Hey everyone, so last weekend was an amazing event at the Portland Tea Festival. We had such a good time, and I'm so grateful for the people that put the event on, the volunteers, and all the attendees. I want to talk to you about one of my favorite parts about the event, because what I would do is typically I'd have 4 teas going at once, and I'd have them brewing in some teaware such as this, and then I would have my pouring pitchers out, and sometimes the tea would get kind of behind, like I wouldn't have enough hot water ready, or I had to steep it a few times to get enough tea to pour for everyone. So what I would do is, when I was getting that ready, I would sort of tell everybody, okay, we're almost ready to do a pouring, and then we would get like about 8 or 12 people lined up in front of our booth here, and then we had a really long table. So once the tea was ready, I'd say, all right, it's ready. It's time to taste the tea. And I'd say, set your cups down. And everybody put their cup down, and then I would go sample. I'd pour out the samples for each person. And I'd tell them about the tea. And it was a lot of fun like that. And then we'd go through each tea like that. And then once that group would leave, the next group would come in, and I'd have all the tea ready, and I'd do the same thing. So one of the big things about that event that was super significant to me is being able to get that many people. I mean, I can't even imagine how many people I poured tea for that day. I'm guessing something like 600 to 800 people. So to have that many people try new tea and try teas that they haven't had before was definitely one of the highlights of the year for me. Another thing that I thought was really funny about the event is that we do have, like I said, I would typically sample 4 teas in a row, and it would be a green oolong, a honey oolong, and then a cooked pour, and then a raw pour. And at the raw pour, I would say, this is the Scotch of tea. And then everybody was like, oh, Scotch of tea. And they'd get kind of excited about it. And also, people would go out and tell people, and then they'd come back and say, someone told me I had to try the Scotch of tea. So I thought that was kind of funny. But here's what was also interesting, and I had to laugh at myself a lot for this, because what would happen is people would come into the line and they'd say, oh, I want to try that one. And then they would start out of order. And I would always say, this is, again, my problem in a way, because my goal was for everyone to try all of the tea. And why is that? Well, people have an idea, right? They say, I don't like green tea. Well, the green oolong we were serving isn't green tea. And a lot of times people that don't like green tea, including myself, I almost don't like green tea, I can say, but I kind of do. So I almost don't. But I love green oolong. So I would just say that my main goal is to expose people to teas they haven't had before, so that they can maybe they can find a tea they don't like. Because that's they can find a tea that they didn't know they like. And that's one of my favorite things about serving tea or exposing people to tea, is to help people find tea that they didn't know they like. And so I would just, I was a little tired, or I don't know, something was off in that event. And I was just like, it was really hard. I was like, okay, you guys, every time someone would come up and they'd say, I want to try this one, or I'm going to go out of order, I would say like, okay, I would try and be like, put on my best customer facing voice and face and say, all right, you guys, it's like a flight. We're going to go from left to right, or in your case, right to left. And we're going to try these teas so that everyone gets to try something maybe they haven't had before. And some people would be, most people were really open to it. Some people wouldn't be, and they'd want to start wherever they wanted. But then 9 times out of 10, they'd say, oh, well, I want to try that other one too. And then they'd like jump around in the order. Well, the reason we do the order is because there is a certain amount of palate shutdown that happens when you start with the Scotch of tea. When you start with something that's really strong, really full body, a little smoky, and kind of rich, it's harder to pick up on the subtle nuances of the green oolong. So anyway, we had a reason for it. appreciate it or not, you know, it's like just one of those things. Now, the other thing that was, I just had to laugh at myself. Like I said, I had to start just laughing and be like, okay, unfortunately, you guys, I'm the one doing this, and I'm probably the worst person in the world to do this because I'm a Virgo, and I've got now my, you know, oh, it's got to be like this way, and we got to taste it like that. And so I was kind of like laughing about that out loud to people, like, okay, yeah, haha, I know, I'll just let you try whatever you want. Just like, I'll just be quiet. So thank you so much for watching. And if you were at the festival, go ahead and leave a comment and just tell everybody about the festival. It's an amazing festival. So the key festivals right now in the Northwest are the Eugene Tea Festival, the Portland Tea Festival. There is the Pacific Northwest Tea Festival that we have not yet been a vendor at, that we are looking forward to being a vendor of. And so those are the Northwest Tea Festivals. Highly recommend attending and learning and trying as many teas as you can. Cheers. The last thing I wanted to say about the Portland Tea Festival is we served tea for probably, let's just say, it seems like it was 1,000 people, you know. And what I noticed is that not one person did the slurp. Now the slurp is a tea taster's trick to replace the tea in the mouth, in the tasting area of the mouth, which is kind of the upper palate in the back, towards the back of the mouth when we taste tea. Obviously, you taste tea with your whole mouth, but when we want to really experience the full flavor of the tea, we do a slurp action. And how you do that is you take a small amount of tea, put it in your mouth, let it sit there for a second. Make sure it's not scalding hot. And then you're gonna inject that. Now there's two ways to slurp, really. You can just slurp, like so, and it will taste different than if you don't slurp. But if you do the power slurp, the injection slurp, then you could do that first slurp, and then it will let that tea position it in the mouth, kind of at that where the arc of the mouth, the arc of the roof of the mouth is, and then you'll position it there, and then you'll inject it through a kind of slurping. And you can practice without tea in your mouth, but let me show you here. And when you do that, it replaces so say we're tasting 4 different teas at our booth, for example. Each tea kind of muddles the mouth, kind of confuses the senses, or at least it puts some information in there, and then you're thinking about that. When you go to the next one, if you use that slurping technique, it really shifts it replaces the old flavor with the new flavor. And so that's a tea taster's trick that I wanted to share with you. The other thing about it is when you do it that way, it will really impress the person that's pouring tea for you, because they'll think, oh man, this person's an expert. Anyway, if they know the trick too, you know. So pinkies up, let's slurp. Or like Metallica, oops. Let's do it like that from now on. Pinkies up, slurp. Cheers.